All right, everyone, so let's get started here. First off, my name is Dylan Kotecki, and I'm one of the software and video educators here at ON1. I'm actually joined by my good pal Mo, who's going to be running the Q&A. So if you do have any questions, feel free to hit up that Q&A dialogue. We'll try to get to as many as we can throughout. If it's pertinent to what I'm doing, Mo might interrupt me, and I can kind of show whatever question you have on screen. Keep in mind that this webinar is being recorded, so if you do need to leave for any time, we're going to have this posted to our blog and our website and our social media later today. So if you do miss anything, you can head to those later today, and you can check out the webinar in its entirety. So today we're going to be exploring ON1 Photo RAW 2019, and we're going to be going over some of the basics, and then we'll get into some more of the advanced features within the program. We're going to start by just browsing and finding some photos. And then we'll develop a photo, do a little bit of retouching, and then we'll go from there into some of the advanced features like HDR, pano, focus stacking. We'll play a little bit with layers, and then we'll retouch a portrait using the portrait tool, and then we'll resize a photo, and then we should be good to go. So without further ado, let's get started here. And the great thing about ON1 Photo RAW is that it's an incredibly fast image browser that you actually don't have to import anything into. So without actually importing anything into the program, I can just go over here to my folders pane, and I can roll through these folders to where I know my photos are stored. And once I click on that folder, I have all of these different photos I can look through. I can double click on them. And now I have a detail view of my photo, and I can simply scroll through all of those different photos within that folder. Then there's a few different ways that you can actually view these photos. One of my favorite ways is to access the film strip view mode, which you can access by hitting F on your keyboard. So once you pull up the film strip view mode, you'll notice that you have all of these different thumbnails at the bottom while you're still maintaining this larger preview in the middle. This allows you to browse through all of these photos so that you can see which one's coming next or where you're at within that folder, so that you can find the photo you want and you can take it into edit or wherever it may be and start developing it. Another cool tool in here is that you can actually rate your photos within the film strip view mode. And there's a couple different ways you can actually rate your photos. You can actually just head down to, I'm going to move this bar real quick. You can actually head down to the actual star ratings above the photo, and you can click on them, and this will rate your photo for you. You can actually use different color ratings to rate your photo if you'd like as well. And you can either like or dislike the photo. Or what I usually like to do is I'll just probably grab a photo that has no ratings, and if I want to rate it a 5-star photo, let's say, I can just simply hit 5 on my keyboard, and it will automatically rate it a 5-star photo. And you'll notice that it automatically advanced to the next photo. But if you want to turn that on, you can just simply head up to Photo, Auto Advance. And now if I rate a photo, say I rate this a 3-star photo, you'll notice that it changed the rating to a 3-star photo, but it didn't automatically advance to the next one. I recommend having that on. It's just kind of a nifty way to save some time whenever you're rating through your photos. So if you want to rate through some photos really quick, it's pretty easy if you're just using your keyboard. So I'll show you how to do it. If you want to just rate these photos real quick, you could just go 4, 5, 3, 2, whatever it may be, and you can rate them incredibly fast, and it will automatically advance to the next photo. So it'll save you time when you're calling and rating your photos. Another cool way to go back if you're in film strip view mode is to simply hit G on your keyboard. So if you hit G on your keyboard, it's going to take you back into the grid view. Basically, I like to think of it as G for a grid of photos. So if you want to go back into film strip, it's F on your keyboard. To go back into the grid view, it's G. And then if you just want to view a large preview of the photo, a detail view we like to call it, you can simply hit D on your keyboard. Oops. That took me into develop. Sorry, E on your keyboard. E on your keyboard. D is for develop. We'll get back into that later in the webinar. Okay, so we'll head back into our grid view here. And another cool way to play around with ON1 Photo RAW is actually by organizing your photos. So you can actually organize your photos incredibly easy. And there's a couple different ways you can do it. If you want to just move your photos into a different folder, or you want to move them around into an album, let's say, you can just simply click on the photos that you want to move, and then you can just drag and drop them. So you can actually just drag and drop into any of these. Let's say you have a external hard drive over here. You can actually just browse for your external hard drive that you want to bring these photos into. And then you can simply just drag it over and drop it in wherever you want those photos to be stored. And it will automatically copy and paste those photos into that folder. So that'll save you some time whenever you're wanting to organize and move some photos around. Also, a quick way to organize is you can actually just create subfolders within that folder. So if you have a group of folders or a group of photos that you want to add a subfolder, you can just click on them all, you can right click, and then you can just add a subfolder, and you can just name it whatever you want. And it will automatically create a subfolder with all of those photos. And the cool thing about it is it does it on the hard drive level so that everything is consistent and you're not confused when you go back into a folder and these photos aren't in a subfolder within your hard drive. So also, if you're looking for photos or trying to find your photos, you can actually head down into this filters pane here. And this is where you can search your different photos using criteria such as aperture, focal length, things like that. Let's say we just want to search for photos we shot on the Oregon coast. We can search for Oregon coast. This will pull up all of the photos that we shot on the Oregon coast. And let's say I want to search for a photo that was shot in the evening. I can go into my advanced options here. I can scroll down to this drop-down menu, and I'll just pick time of day. And now I can click in here, and I'll just select evening. And this will pull up all of the photos that were shot in the evening on the Oregon coast. So now I can browse through here, and I know this is the photo I'm looking for. So now I've found that photo simply by just using this filters pane here to search for the photo. So besides, besides browsing and looking for your photos, ON1 Photo RAW is an incredibly fast or incredibly powerful RAW processor. So if you do want to process photos incredibly quickly, you can do that inside of the edit module. So let's just grab a photo here, and we'll head into the edit module. And for those who are familiar with ON1 Photo RAW 2018, you'll notice that the modules are set up a little bit differently. Whereas develop, effects, local adjustments, and the newly added portrait are all inside this edit module. Rather than having them as separate modules, they're basically just as tabs inside of this one module. You can also click and hold on this, and this will pull up all of the different tabs that you can access. Okay, so now we're inside develop, and the first thing I like to do whenever I'm editing a photo is, especially if I have, you know, kind of a nice sky on my foreground, is I usually like to pull back on the exposure to bring back some color into that bring some color into the sky area. So if I pull back on my exposure slider here, just to kind of get the sky where I want it, right about there. The great thing about Photo RAW is it has an incredibly powerful shadow slider. So now I can just pull up all my shadows here, and you'll see it'll pull out all of that dark detail and tonalities from within this well area while leaving the sky area a little bit less exposed and a little bit less blown out. So now what we can do that we added, that we pulled up on these shadow sliders, is that what I like to do is I'll hold down my J key and I'll pull back on my blacks to add a little bit of true black into the photo, and then it'll make it a little less flat. So now if I double click this black slider, you'll see that it makes my photo pretty flat, but if I pull back on it, it brings back some of that contrast into the photo. It makes it a little bit more interesting. And we can also pull up on this exposure if we want to. And say we want to deal with this sky area without actually dealing with this bottom area on our photo. We can actually head into our local adjustments tab. And let's pull out a local adjustment. We'll set it to darken. And I'm just going to grab my adjustable gradient here. And I'm going to drop it down. And now I can play with this adjustable gradient. And you'll notice that the top of this is the only area that's being adjusted. And none of this bottom area by this well is actually being modified because I'm using this local adjustment that's actually set to the top. So it's only being applied to the sky area. And I can modify this by using these handles here to modify the feathering. So you'll note if I pull up, it makes it softer. And if I pull down, it makes it a harder feathering. I'll leave it about like right there. Pull it down a little bit. And then I can actually modify any of these settings, and it will only be applied to that top of my photo without being applied to the bottom. So now we've kind of, you know, added some style to this photo. We've basically just added some basic tonality and color. What we can do now is if we have a group of photos that are similar, we can pull up our film strip view mode by hitting F on our keyboard. And now if I want to actually apply these settings to different photos, I can just hold down Shift, I'll select those photos, and then I'll just come over here and I'll hit Sync. And it will automatically sync all of the settings that I applied to this photo onto these other photos. So that's a nifty way to save time if you're just wanting to copy and paste settings onto different photos. And you can easily just pull up your film strip view mode by just hitting F on your keyboard. So we'll go back into develop here. And actually, I'll just ask Mo, do we have any questions so far, Mo?
Yeah, there is a question about the filters area specifically in Browse. I don't know if you want to get to that just yet or maybe in a little bit, but someone's asking if you can show how to select photos from a specific time of day or specific month, year. So you don't have to do it right now, but when you get a chance, just cover that back in Browse. But otherwise, no questions.
Awesome, thanks, Mo. Yeah, I'll get back to that in a second when I'm kind of showing you guys or done showing you guys this retouching. So, okay, so we've kind of set the basic tonality for this photo, and let's say we want to retouch the photo a little bit. Maybe people want to remove some objects from a photo or some scratch marks or some dust, whatever it may be. If you want to retouch your photo, simply head over to this toolbar over here and hit Fix. And now you have your different retouch tools. So you have your perfect eraser here, your retouch brush, and then your clone stamp tool. If you're familiar with Photoshop, you're probably familiar with the clone stamp tool or the idea of it. Let's actually just grab our perfect eraser here, and let's actually just remove this rock. I know it's not very distracting, but just to give you guys an idea of how this works. It's going to use content-aware technology to fill in that area with content-aware pixels that actually match the area around it, so you can't actually tell what was removed. So you'll notice that it actually took that rock right away and just erased it. So this is great for removing larger things like people or objects from your photos, whereas the retouch brush would be great for like dust or scratches or things like that. Let's say we just want to remove these clouds up here. We can just brush this on real quick, and it'll easily just remove those clouds from our photos. So it's a great way to just kind of retouch up your photo if you're wanting to remove small imperfections like blemishes and things like that. So that's a great way to retouch. Let's actually head back into Browse, and I can show you guys those filters again. A nifty way to go back into Browse from Edit is just simply hit G on your keyboard. And if you guys are trying to learn the keyboard shortcuts, the best way to learn them is probably just to hover over where you want to go or what you want to click on. And you'll notice that it'll tell you what this keyboard shortcut is. So this one, switch to ON1 Browse, parentheses G. So you just hit G, and it will take you right back into Browse. Okay, so now to the filters here. We'll roll these up. Okay, so now if you want to go into this filters pane and you want to search for different things, let's just search for that Oregon coast again. Search catalog folders. And so basically the advanced criteria down here, you have all of these different options. So if you wanted to search for, let's say, I don't know, shutter speed, you could use the shutter speed, and then you could just go in here and pick which shutter speed you wanted. And if any of those photos in here matched that criteria, then those photos would show up. So the criteria has to be matched for the photo to show up, or it's obviously not going to show up. Does that answer the question? I guess does she just want more?
Yeah, I think that helps a little bit. I haven't seen anything come through the question wire. Just as a reminder to people that are attending, the webinar is being recorded. It will be posted to our site this afternoon. And if you do have questions throughout, feel free to throw them into that Q&A module there. I'm answering a few of them. There is a question about where someone can find keyboard shortcuts. If you could maybe just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so if you want to go to keyboard shortcuts, just go to Help up here, and then click ON1 Photo RAW 2019 Online Help, and then it'll have the user guide, which has all of the keyboard shortcuts right in it. Or is there a faster way, Mo? Do you know a faster way to get the keyboard shortcuts?
That's probably the fastest way, or just hovering your mouse over the tool is kind of another little secret. It'll show you what key to use to access that tool a lot of the time.
Definitely.
User guide's definitely the best place to go. They're all listed out whenever you're in the different modules there. Yeah,
perfect. Yeah, so yeah, if you want to, like Mo was saying, probably the best way to do it is honestly just to hover over where you want to go, and it will tell you. But yeah, if you want to go back into the user guide, just go to Help, and then ON1 Photo RAW 2019 Online Help, and then it'll have all of the user guides for every product we have. So that'll be a good way to learn the keyboard shortcuts. Okay, so that was a quick way to develop a photo, but there's a ton of awesome, cool features in here that aren't just developing a photo. A lot of photographers like to shoot landscapes. They like to shoot HDR and panoramas and do focus stacking. So those features are available as well. So if you want to shoot pano, let's actually grab a pano photo here. And to merge your panos together and align them, just simply have them selected and then just head over here to Pano. And once you click on it, it's gonna align those photos and it's gonna merge them together inside of a 360-degree sphere, kind of your normal panorama output. And then once it composes it, it will bring us a preview dialog, and we can actually start modifying some of the tools for our pano. So you'll notice that it actually just aligned those photos and merged them together, and we have this nice little photo here, nice little panorama here rather, and we have these panorama options over here, which we can use to modify kind of our panorama a little bit. I just like to stick with crop. That's probably my favorite edges to leave, but I was actually for a while using warp to fill because it kind of looked more real, but I tend to leave it at crop. And then file size, I usually put it at 50% because the other one is incredibly huge. And then I'm always a big fan of choosing where I like to open it up, and I always probably pick develop just because then I can start editing the photo right away. So once you have this panorama all put together the way you want it, just go ahead and click save, and then it'll take you into where you want it to open up in. Another cool feature that we actually added just this year was focus stacking. So if you take a group of photos with different focal lengths, or different focus points. So if I scroll through these photos here from front to back, you'll notice that the focus kind of falls off to the front. And as I go back, it kind of falls off towards the back. So say we want to create one hyperfocus image from all of these different focuses, we can select all of these photos, and then we can just head into focus. And it's going to create, it's actually going to align and merge these photos together into one hyper-focused image. And it's actually great because you can actually play with the different depths of field, and also you can actually remove different focus areas from that photo. So once this loads and brings us up a preview, here we go. So there we go. Now we have one hyper-focus image that everything is in focus. So now if we want to play with the depth of field, let's say we want to bring in some blur to the front. We can just pull back on this slider here, and you'll notice that it's bringing in some nice blur in the front, while leaving the back nice and in focus. And you can also do the same thing with the back. So if you want to bring in some blur from the background. So it's just an awesome way to play with your focus a little bit. Okay, so, and then once you have that the way you want it, you can actually click where you want it to open up in, just like everywhere else, and then you can click save. We'll go back and cancel. Do we have any questions, Mo, at this moment?
No questions right now. Some things that I'm answering. So if you do have a question in there, I'm going to help answer it out there. So feel free to keep going on, Dylan.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Okay, so another cool feature that we have in Photo RAW 2019 is HDR. So if you do shoot HDR, we have one of the fastest HDR softwares out there. It's up to 7 times faster than any other software merging HDR. So once you have your HDR exposures selected, I just have my 3 HDR exposures here. I can just head into HDR. And now I have a merged together HDR photo. You'll see at the bottom here, we have the 3 different exposures, and we can actually use these as our deghosting. So the one that's that's super selected, this middle one, is the one that we're using for the deghosting, which we probably don't have much ghosting in the water, which ghosting is basically just the movement through the images of the HDR. So I'm actually probably just going to leave this off. But let's say I want to actually use this photo as my base exposure. Whatever this aperture icon is selected on is your base exposure. So if you want to change that, you can simply just click the button where it's supposed to be. And that will make this photo my base exposure. There we go. It brightens it up a little bit. If it was more of a separated bracket, it'd probably brighten it up more. So let's actually just leave this one as our base exposure. And now I can go into my tone and color over here. And let's say I want to modify my tone and color. I can just modify those adjustments. That looks probably good. And then let's go into HDR look. And I'm probably just going to leave it at natural, which is the default setting. And then in here it says open up inside of develop. So we'll leave it at that. And these modifications here, any of these settings that you do apply to this photo are all non-destructive and re-editable. So don't get scared if you actually make a look right here and then you click save, because you can go back and you can re-edit those adjustments at any time. So Let's hit save here. It's going to merge our photos together inside of a panorama, or inside of an HDR photo, and then we can go and we'll actually start playing with the layers a little bit. So it'll take us inside of the edit module, inside of the develop tab. And for those of you who are familiar with 2018, you'll notice that the layers is actually integrated inside of edit. So we actually have a layers pane right here that we can play with to add and remove layers. So let's actually add a nice sky layer here. We'll go into our extras pane, which this is basically just ON1 extras. They have a bunch of preloaded extras like textures and backgrounds and bokeh and things like that you can add onto your photos. So we'll go into backgrounds and let's go into skies. And we'll grab a nice sky layer here. And once I double click it, it'll apply that to my photo. And now you'll notice over here in this layers pane, I have two different layers that I can play with. So let's actually lower the opacity to this one. I'm going to grab my move tool by hitting V on my keyboard. And again, if you want to know what any of these tools are not, if you want to know how to access any of these tools, just hover over them and it will tell you the keyboard shortcut. So V for move tool, and then I can move this up. Just going to align this sun with the sun from my original photo. I'll pull this over. And then I'm just going to take the opacity to 100%. And then I'm going to drop this down right below this layer. I'm going to make sure this layer is selected. And then what I'm going to do, since layers inside of our edit module here, we can actually mask and blend them. So you'll notice that we have all of the masking options we did with any other filters or local adjustments. So we can actually mask and blend these layers to create awesome composites, which makes it incredibly easy when you're replacing skies. So you'll notice that this mask is actually set to white, which means it's always revealing the entire photo. But let's say we want to mask, just kind of this area so that we can blend the sky in. We'll actually grab our masking bug right here, which you can grab by hitting M on your keyboard. And we'll just drop this down kind of on our horizon line here. And then let's play with this probably about right there. I'm actually going to move this sky layer over again. There we go. Okay, so we'll go back to this layer. And now what I'm going to do, because obviously this sky layer is completely covering this rock, is I'm going to make sure that that layer is selected. And then I'm just going to grab my masking brush by hitting B on my keyboard. I'm going to head up to my masking options, and I'm going to make sure that my perfect brush is toggled, which your perfect brush is just going to separate different tonalities when you're brushing, and it's automatically going to detect colors so that you're not brushing out different areas or foregrounds and backgrounds. So we'll actually set this to paint in. And now I'll just paint over this rock here, paint in this sky replacement. So there we go. And now if we turn this on and off, you notice we have a nice sky replacement where we did, basically just using another layer. The cool thing about layers inside of ON1 Photo RAW 2019 is actually that you can modify the specific adjustments for that layer without actually modifying this entire composite. So let's say I only want to modify this area in here. I can have this area selected, and now I can modify those adjustments we made earlier inside of HDR. So you'll see that it's only modifying that bottom part of my photo with the rock and the water, and not actually modifying the sky layer. But if I wanted to modify the sky layer, I could have that layer selected, and you'll notice that all of these tone and colors are set to 0. So now I can go in, and if I want to modify that sky layer, I can do that separately without actually modifying the whole photo. Just leave that. Another cool tool is that if you actually want to modify the entire composite, but you want to leave the layers, is you can actually right-click, and you can create a new stamped layer. And what this is going to do is it's actually going to merge these two layers together and then create a duplicate of it so that you have these two layers still available to modify, but then you have a merged together photo that you can actually take in and modify the whole composite. So now if I modify these adjustments, you'll notice that it's modifying the entire photo and not just modifying each layer. So we'll leave that at that, and then usually what I like to do is I'll just head into effects here. I'll add a nice LUT. I love LUTs, and then they're a great way to stylize your photos. And then now, you know, we have this nice replace sky stylistic photo that we did in just a few minutes just by using layers and some basic masking. Okay, so are there any questions after that, Mo, after that demonstration?
No questions. So keep on going through.
Awesome, man. All right, so that's a quick way to use layers, sort of replace the sky. There's a bunch of different ways that you can use layers to your advantage. Probably the easiest one is to replace the sky. And just keep in mind that the best way to do it is to have, so we'll just remove these. Oops. We'll reset this. I'd say the best way to replace the sky, or the best photos that need sky replacing, are these ones with huge, large tonalities, because they're a lot easier to blend and they're a lot easier to replace the sky and make it look natural. Whereas if you had a bunch of clouds up here, it'd be a little harder to make it look a lot more natural. So keep that in mind if you're trying to replace skies. We'll move on here. So let's go back into Browse. Hit G on the keyboard to go back into Browse. Cancel this so it doesn't save anything. And we'll get into one of the newer features in ON1 Photo RAW 2019, which is our portrait tool. So if we have a portrait here, we want to take it into Edit. We'll just head into Edit, and then we'll head into this Portrait tab here. Once you click on the Portrait tab, it's automatically going to detect her face for you and create a mask of that face. So what I can do now is basically I'll head into my, I'll actually zoom in real quick so we can see it a little bit better. And now if I want to mask her face out, what I can do is I can just simply click Skin. And now I can modify these blemishes and stuff. And I'm actually going to put it on incredibly strong just so you guys can see it. But now if I turn this on and off, you'll see that it automatically created a mask for her face. And now we're actually just masking, or we're actually just retouching the skin by simply applying different adjustments to that mask. So it's an incredibly fast way to retouch portraits and add some smoothing to skin. So now that we have that skin retouched, let's say we want to retouch her eyes a little bit. So we'll just grab this eye option here. We'll drop it in the middles of her eyes. And then we just kind of define the parameters of these little overlays. Boom. And then what we can do is we can go down here and we can play with the whitening and detail of her eyes. I usually like to pull down to 0 for both of these, and then I'll pull up on the whitening first. And then the detail is going to come in strong, so about right there. That added some nice whiteness and some nice detail to her eyes. Furthermore, we can actually modify the lips and the mouth. So if we want to add some whitening to the teeth, let's say we were shooting portraits and the light was giving that some, or giving her teeth some yellow tinge, we can actually just click mouth. And now we can just drop it on the corners of her mouth like we did at her eyes. We'll just modify the parameters again. And now let's say we want to whiten her teeth. We'll just pull up on the whitening, and it'll automatically whiten her teeth for us. And now let's say we want to add a little bit of vibrance to her lips. We can pull up on that. And now we've added some nice whitening and color to her lips. So let's actually zoom out here, and we'll just turn this on and off. And you'll see it quickly retouches the photo, smooths out the skin, adds some nice detail and whiteness to the eyes, but also brings out some color and also adds some whitening to the teeth. So it's an incredibly fast way to retouch portraits. And the cool thing about it too is that you can actually brush any of the areas out. So let's say we don't want it applied to our eyebrows. We can hit B on our keyboard to grab our masking brush. Make sure it's set to paint in. And now we can brush it off our eyebrows to bring back in some of the eyebrow detail. I just like to brush it off of eyelashes too, just in case it's on there. And then you can kind of just go around and modify it how you please. You know, if you want a little bit more detail in the nose, So yeah, so it's just a great way that you can retouch a portrait and then go in and actually modify the filter and the mask itself. So now that we've kind of retouched this photo, we've added a little bit of retouching and skin smoothing to it. What we can do now is let's style it a little bit. So if I want to grab my preset drawer, I can actually head over here to this icon and I can click on it. This will pull up all of my presets. Once I've found a photo that I can grab, I'll just go into Hipster. And if I want to see a larger thumbnail preview of these photos, I can just simply click this button here. And now I have a large thumbnail preview of all of these different presets that are applied to my photo. Once I find the one that I like, I can just head down. We'll grab this one. I'm actually just going to remove that again. And you'll see it added a nice preset style to my photo. So now if I head into Effects, you'll see that it added all of these different filters to my shot. Well, the cool thing about adding presets in ON1 Photo RAW 2019 is that you can actually modify any of these different filters as you please without actually modifying the preset. So if I go into this color enhancer here, and we can turn it on and off to see what it does, it kind of just adds a white blob onto our face, so we can just remove it. We'll see what this tone enhancer does. I like how it's adding that kind of purple tinge to the photo. It's nice style, so we'll leave that. And then this photo, or this texture, it's kind of adding that texture on the background, which I think it could be a little stronger because we are doing the whole steampunk look. So let's actually just grab this grunge texture. But you'll see that once I added that grunge texture, it applied it to my entire photo, and it's on her face as well. So what we can do is we can grab our masking brush, and I'll actually grab or actually open these masking options so you can see when I'm painting it out. And now I'll just actually paint this out from her face. There we go. Now it's not being applied to her face at all. And now if we go in here and we view our mask, you see that area that I painted out is black because it's concealing that area from my photo. And the area that's white is actually revealing the mask. So this is a good way that you can actually go in and kind of clean it up as well. There we go. This texture is a light leak, I think. Yeah, I like the light leak. I like how that's looking. So let's see how this vignette's doing. It's a little too strong for my liking, so I'm just going to pull back on the opacity a little bit. Probably about right there. So that's a quick way to modify, a certain look just by going in and modifying the different filters for that preset. Another cool tool that we actually added this year is our text tool. So this is a high school senior. Let's say she wants a senior portrait with maybe some text on it that says her name. We can just grab this text tool. Let's grab a nice text here. Grab that one. There we go. There we go. And then let's change the color. Let's just drop it on her hair here. There we go. I can pull this down. Make it maybe a little bit bigger. There we go. And now we have this nice senior portrait that we modified in just a few minutes, just using a preset, text tool, and then doing some simple retouching with the portrait tool. Another cool feature in here, probably the last feature I'm going to show you guys, is the resize feature. And before I do that, let me ask Mo if there's any questions that I could answer. Hey Mo, is there any questions so far, man?
No questions right now, Dylan, so keep on going. You're doing good.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, so I'm going to head back into Browse. I'm going to hit G on my keyboard. It's going to take me right back into Browse. And let's say you want to, you have your photo edited, you have all the things you want done to it. Let's say you want to print it or you want to prepare it for printing. Your one-stop shop for that is probably going to be Resize. So once you have a photo that you want to resize or prep for printing, just grab it and then you can head over to Resize here. And this will take us into the Resize module, which basically has everything we need to prepare a photo for printing. So over here we have different presets. We have different presets that are basically just different preloaded paper styles and size styles that we can apply to our photo. You'll notice on the right-hand side we have our document size, which we can use to, resize our photo. We have the settings, which is basically how we want that photo to be resized. And then we have sharpening, film grain, tiling, gallery wrap if we want to do like a canvas or something like that. So let's actually resize this photo, and it's a 13 by 10. So it's about 13 inches by 10 inches tall. And let's just actually use an HB canvas, and let's do 30 by 40. So this is about 4 times the size of its original photo. And you'll notice that once I click on it, it will apply a gallery wrap automatically, and it will resize the photo for us. And it's actually using Genuine Fractal's algorithm to allow it to resize to any proportion and still maintain the same quality and detail as it did before. So you'll notice that it's 40 by 30 now. It's about 4 times its size. And if I zoom in here to 100, it's going to take the Genuine Fractal's algorithm a minute to kick in. But once it kicks in, you'll notice that it's maintained the quality and the look of our photo. And there hasn't been any detail loss, and it's still 4 times that size. So you'll see here that's still razor sharp, and we can still see all the details in those leaves without actually modifying any of the detail or the clarity in the size. All right, so now that we have this photo resized the way we want to do it, if you want to export a photo, there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can either do it by just simply hitting this export drawer here, which is going to be available in any module at any time. You just have to have a photo selected, obviously. So you could click this export drawer. This will roll up the export drawer where you have different things you can use to export your photo. It's going to take a minute because I resized it to an incredibly large size, and now it's taking a sec. So I'm going to ask Mo, is there any questions while I wait for this thing to export?
No questions here. So just to remind people, there is that Q&A module. So if you do have a question that you want to ask us, feel free to throw that in there and I'll take a look. And also this webinar is being recorded. We will have it posted this afternoon. So if you feel like you need to duck out at any time, feel free to do so. We'll get this posted here today.
Awesome. Thanks, Mo. Okay, sorry guys, I just had to quit it real quick. All right, sorry guys, we're back. I had to quit it real quick because it was taking a minute. But okay, so back to the exporting. So if you want to export a photo, you can do it like I was saying with this export drawer here if you have a photo selected. This will pull up this little export drawer where you have different things you can modify. It's kind of like resize in a little side panel. So you have photo size, you have watermark. If you want to add a watermark, you can. You can add sharpening, tiling. If you want to, create 3 different photos with one. You can do gallery wrap. You can change the file type, obviously your location, and then you can rename. My way of doing it is I usually just head up to File, and then quick export. And then you can choose wherever you want that photo to be exported into, and then you just click Save, and it will save it into that location. Obviously, it doesn't allow you to modify any of the different settings that this export drawer does. But if you're just looking for a quick export, that's probably the way to do it. So yeah, if there's no more questions, I'll probably just end it right there. So those are a few different ways to kind of get around and find your photos, and then a couple different ways to use the different features inside of ON1 Photo RAW.
Dylan, I sorry to interrupt you here. Yeah. I did see a question or two come by a little while ago about some of the advanced masking options. If you wanted to maybe cover some of those for a few minutes here. Yeah. We have about 64 people that are hanging out here with us, so I think it'd be a good time for you if you got a few minutes.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's actually let's do this photo here. Let's reset this. Okay, so we'll head into edit here and we'll reset this photo. I'm just gonna crop it real quick. Okay, so a couple of the advanced masking features, and honestly, they're not crazy advanced, they just kind of sound intimidating, but they're really easy to use. So let's just add a, let's see here. Let's just add a photo filter. And let's say we only want this photo filter to be applied to this yellow color on our photo. So we can go in here to our masking options, and let's actually just pull this up. There we go. Let's say we only want this photo filter to be applied to this yellow area on our shot. We can actually go into this masking options here, and let's say we want to create a color range mask. So we could go in here to this color range area here, click on it, use the dropper tool, and we can just drop it on that yellow. Now we can view our mask. If we add a little bit more color range, now you'll see if I zoom in here, that that's only being applied to that area that I used for my color range and not being applied anywhere else. So color range masks are awesome, especially with flowers. They're pretty easy to do with flowers just because there's a lot of specific bright, vibrant colors with flowers. So you can even modify that further. And then if you wanted to, let's say you wanted to add some dynamic contrast to this area on the flower without actually modifying the other areas, we'll copy this mask. We'll add a filter. We'll add dynamic contrast, and let's just make it crazy surreal. We'll go into our masking options, and then what we can do is we'll just paste this mask. Now we view it. It's the same mask we had before. So now if we go back and we turn this on and off, that dynamic contrast is only being applied to that yellow area around these flowers and not being applied anywhere else. So let's zoom out real quick here. And now let's say we want to create a mask based on brightness. So let's say we want to mask out these petal areas in our photo without actually modifying any of these green tones or anything else in our shot. So let's add a photo filter, and let's just add that alette, and let's make this just, there we go. Okay, so that's being applied to our entire shot. So let's say we only want it to be applied to this area in our leaf here, or our flower here, sorry, rather. What we can do is we can go into our masking options here, and we'll actually hit Lumen, which is basically, it's going to create a luminosity mask. So we'll hit Lumen. Now if I view this mask, it's creating a mask, obviously with the black and white and the grays, based off of the luminosity or the brightness in my photo. And the way that I can modify that is I can head down to this levels and this window slider here, and I can just kind of modify so that I can get just those petals white. Probably about right there. Now we'll view it. Now if we turn this on and off, oops. Let's make it a little stronger. This might have been a bad example. Oh, there we go. There we go. That's our ticket. Boom. Okay. So now let's view it. Now if we turn this on and off, there we go. See, now it's only being applied to the areas that we specified by using those different level sliders. And we can actually go back and let's grab another example here. So let's grab this one and we'll reset this photo. Actually, it might be reset. So it's already edited. Oh, no, it's good. Okay. So let's say we want to add a luminosity mask. And this one would be a good one because obviously this sort of yellow-white flower is going to be pretty easy to mask in. So let's just set auto here. I don't know what this is going to look like. We'll pull back on the exposure. That's pretty crazy. Okay. So now let's head into effects. And let's say we want to add let's add some curves. Okay, so now if we want these curves only to be applied to this one flower here, we'll just go in here and we'll grab another luminosity mask, view it, same thing. Just kind of play with your levels a little bit, and it takes some time. So it's not. I play with this all the time, and I still don't get it right. So just playing with it is probably the best way to learn it. You can get that how you want it. There we go. Okay, so then we can just mask out all of this stuff. Boom. Now if we turn this on and off, it's only being applied to this area and these little areas over here. And now let's say we want to add a color enhancer. And let's say we want to turn down these purples, but we want to leave these other colors in the background. So we can actually grab our masking options here, and let's just turn the saturation all the way down. Well, let's turn it up a little bit, maybe like right there. And we'll go in and we'll grab a color range mask, grab our dropper, and we'll drop it on this purple color here. We'll view the mask, and now we can kind of play with the color range a little bit. There we go. Now let's view it. And now if we play with this, you'll see that it's only being applied to the purple area on our flowers and not being applied anywhere else. So like I was saying earlier, it's a great way to modify flowers. Pretty great for skies too. You know, if you have a kind of a large tonal area in your sky, you can use your color range mask for that. So let's turn that down a little bit. And then let's say we wanted to copy that mask, and we'll add another filter, and we'll add dynamic contrast, make it surreal, we'll paste that. Now that's only being applied to those kind of dimmed down flowers and not anywhere else on the photo. So that's it sounds like an advanced masking technique, but luminosity masks and color range masks are pretty easy. The hardest part, honestly, is probably just dealing with these levels here. But if you have, a large tonal area that's brighter and, easily separate from the other areas in your photo, that'll probably work better. But if you have to kind of modify the levels, that's probably the most difficult part of color range and luminosity masking. So are there any questions, Mo, about that?
Yeah, no, that was great. I think you knocked it out of the park with that one. So yeah, I think things are good, man.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys sticking around. Thanks for everyone that came out. Like I said, this is being recorded, and so if you missed anything in the beginning and showed up late, you can check it out on our website, Facebook, basically all our social media, and you can watch it in its entirety. So thanks so much, guys. Thanks, Mo, for riding along with me. Have a great day, and have a great weekend.